Welcome to the Inspired Evolution, and it is such a treat to be here today. Today we have the pleasure and the vibes from Daniel Tonkin. Daniel, how are you?
I'm good. I'm feeling good.
It's so good to have you here. For those tuning into Daniel for the first time, the way he puts it, the journey started in August 2008, which is just over a decade ago. We're getting old, mate. In a place called Perth, Australia. Some describe it as a spread out city with a country feel. It was the perfect place, he says, to start his entrepreneurial journey. Over the last 10 years, he's been sharpening his tools through sales, marketing, and recruitment business with great success. He puts that quite humbly, but yeah, it's been amazing to observe from the outside looking in. His organization grew nationally and more recently internationally. And the reason for their success was for their recruitment process and the ability to attract great people. And this is a skill that he feels is valuable to any organization and is key to driving any business forward. He's now based in Sydney and is no longer an entrepreneurial novice, currently focusing on one key area that he's most passionate about. And I can't wait to talk about this, which is connecting talent to opportunity. In 2017, that was the perfect year for him to start on a dream that he'd had for over years and to share his experience to help companies grow. Together with some business partners, they have set up a boutique recruitment agency specializing in sales, marketing, and corporate support. Clients trust them because they have the skin in the game. As owners of the business, they work together alongside the clients to grow together, and clients enjoy working with them because of their ability to find the needle in the haystack or emergency talent on short notice. As he gets more focused on these two loves of his, which is connecting talent to business, talent to opportunity, and building businesses from the ground up, these two things married in together, he's just going from strength to strength. He puts, which I can't wait to also have a chat about this, when the journey finally ends as an entrepreneur, he wants to be able to help others live a life on their own terms, and that's a big dream of the Inspired Evolution, is to try and inspire people with that as well. So we're going to be deep diving into that, slowly evolving into a coach, consultant, or a mentor. He's just finished his first book, which is, excuse my French, Shit Happens and Then Rainbows. How good is that? And it shares his life as an entrepreneurial journey. So that's quite the preface. It was an opportunity for him to have a look back on how it manifested his dreams into reality through taking action. The book is an insight to the lessons, fuck-ups, learnings, and stories of his journey. So I normally like to start the episode quite lighthearted, and we'll start soft and whatever. Let's screw that, and let's go and just shit happens and then rainbows, mate. That's a reflection on your entrepreneurial journey. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so it's funny. I was trying to put my whole entrepreneurial journey for the last 10 years, trying to find a really simple punchline to describe it, and I guess that was probably when looking back, thinking about all the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations, you sort of hits you hard when you realize that there's so much shit that does happen and so many things you need to overcome before you start seeing the rainbows. And the interesting part is that sometimes you look up and you see the clouds, there's sun behind there, but when you only see clouds for a long period of time, sometimes you start thinking the sun's never going to come out, and think as an entrepreneur sometimes feels like that, when you just feels like you're covered in shit for such long periods of time, and you go, is there any rainbows? Is there anything else other than this?
Yeah, it's amazing because I think especially in today's society, it's almost celebrated this to almost like the new age rock star is the entrepreneur, right? So it's like what rock stars used to be in the 80s is what entrepreneurs are to the millennials.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally. So it just seems so I think the title is quite apt, and shit happens and then rainbows. It's kind of I think it obviously rainbows is the bit of the glitz and the glam, but also there's that whole aspect of, and shit happens for you've kind of got to dig your way through it a little bit, which I think not a lot of people speak about. Most people are live life on your own terms is something that you can create. And I think as millennials, we're tuning more and more into this. But shit happens. Yeah. Do you want to share something around that?
Yeah, it's funny, right? When I opened up my very first company in August 2008, and I just remember because the whole world was going through a crazy global financial crisis, and everyone sort of looking to me going, do you think this is a good time to open up your business?
Yeah.
And I guess, as a 23-year-old, you've got this naivety about yeah, of course, everything's going to be fine, right? Like the whole world is sort of melting down, but a little 23-year-old from Perth, yeah, I think I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the naivety works in your favor.
Mm.
And sometimes I believe if you do too much research, you sort of scare yourself out of trying.
Yeah, right.
And going into it with that naivety and with all, everything going into chaos, you sort of go into anything with this enthusiasm and this naivety. And I guess I didn't have a huge amount of experience in business before. And I guess probably coming into something just with the one skill, which is I just had that ability to take action. And I don't have a huge amount of skills, but that one ability to take action and just every single day, just sort of ticking a few boxes off, sort of really laid that foundation. But like looking back, even just in that 2008, like 10 years on, I'm like, look back, I don't really know how I got out of that, other than the fact every day just ticking one or two boxes off and just slowly just taking one step forward.
It's such an inspiring message of yours. I know you advocate this quite deeply. Thank you so much for sharing, which is just taking action. It's and I remember when we last spoke, it was just, a matter of even if it was just a little bit or a sizable chunk, and how it all it's almost like a compound interest effect. I think you almost referred to it as last time we spoke.
Yeah. And it's interesting, especially in those early years of building my business. I used to get two feelings quite often, and I guess I used to get this anxiety feeling where you're just constantly worried about the future, and I guess that depressive feeling when you're sort of looking back onto the past and looking back when things probably were good or when things could have been easier, like in my previous job, like why have I gone to this entrepreneurial journey? And I probably could have been easier, right, if I stuck in my job, or looking into the future and getting that anxiety going, oh, how am I going to pay my bills tomorrow if things don't turn around? And it's funny because like late at night, and you get this overwhelmed sensation, which is you've got everything to do, but you've got no time to do it. And I used to find myself
with that.
Right, and like you find yourself just at night, just you've got stuff to do, but then all of a sudden you're just on Facebook. You're like on Instagram, and then like half an hour goes past, and you're just like, shit, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I started doing this. I had this really cool. One of my mentors sort of taught me this word called a brain dump. They go, you just got to do a brain dump. I'm like, it's a really, really, really weird words to use, but okay, let's do this. So I was getting these overwhelmed feelings. I couldn't get to sleep. So I just started literally before I go to sleep or wanting to go to sleep. I just used to dump every single bit of shit or thoughts, positive, negative, onto a piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
The list started being super long, and then I used just to go through the list one by one, going, okay, so I'm thinking about buying my mum a birthday present, and her birthday's not for 2 weeks. Do I need to think about or do anything with that this week? No. Do something with that on Sunday. Okay, great. On Sunday, put alarm on my phone. Let's go do that. Okay. I had this. I'm thinking about this weird dream I had last night. Do I need to worry about that ever? Probably not. About buying a house. Do I need to do anything with that? Well, to be fair, I'd probably need to raise some funds. So maybe I'll just set up a bank account and transfer $10 and just call it buying a house fund. And then I'll start that, and then I won't worry about that for a period of time. Okay, great. I'll do that on Sunday. And then and it's funny, I just started like looking at all these thoughts, all these things I wanted to do, and just started putting times and dates of when I need to think about it again. And just started creating these action lists.
Yeah.
I just started sleeping so much easier, and just things just started slowly starting to happen, and I just started having these action lists that I just started to tick off every single day and just revisit on a nightly basis. And all of a sudden, like I'm an incredible sleeper, and my wife gets quite frustrated, and she's just like, we lay down, and sometimes she turns around and asks me a question, and she thinks I'm joking. She's like, like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, and she wakes me up. I'm like, I'm asleep. She goes, how do you sleep that quick? Actionless, get rid of overwhelmness and been able to just work on these action points allows me to be a great sleeper.
That's amazing, and I really respect how you've used like sleep, which is something which is like a clear indicator of your own health and your relationship with yourself, as the litmus, as kind of like how well am I doing? That's really profound. I think it's subtle, but it's like isn't pronounced in that sharing. But I think it's quite important that your relationship with sleep is definitely an indicator of how you are going with your stress and what your relationship with your life is really like, whether you can switch off or not. There's this. I'm so inspired to be having this chat with you, mate, because I've for a while it's been something that like. I've been talking about this in terms of the creative process with some of my clients recently as well, and I got this from actually Vishen. He's the guy that runs Mind Valley, and Inspired Evolution is the representative of Mind Valley Australia, and he shares this story about how basically Michael Jackson wakes up one night at about 3 a.m. and he calls up his agent. He's like, Tito, fireflies. We've got to record a song about fireflies. And Tito's like, yeah, mate, no worries. We'll do it tomorrow morning, first thing. And Michael's like, no. Like right now. We're going to create a song about fireflies right now. And then Tito's like, what's the urgency? And he's like, if I don't create it, Prince will.
Nice.
Which I think is fascinating, because it's like maybe he's just delusional, but like I don't really. And so Vishen goes on to explain this about. He talks about memetics, which is basically the idea that we're more like lemmings than we are like what we think that humans are. Is that we just pick up on ideas based on what's going on in our field rather than what's like actually generated from inside, which is a whole other conversation to be had. But bringing it back to taking action, what it comes down to is like I often. And so the idea is that basically inspiration comes and hits us. So these thoughts that we have, they're actually like, they're not necessarily coming from within, but we're just in a space and we're blessed actually to have these thoughts. So like for Michael Jackson, it was the song Fireflies. But if we turn ourselves off to these thoughts, then they go elsewhere, because the universe is always creating stuff, right? So there's always going to be stuff that's coming forward. And it's going to find the path of least resistance. And I've been coaching people to just take out a pen and a pad every time something hits them, to just write it down. And like, I'm so glad I've got language around it now. I just do it brained up. It's so amazing. because it's fascinating, because I've noticed like just that subtle action of taking a pen to a pad. And this is how the podcast actually started. Like I had this idea and I was just like, okay, these are 6 things I would need to do in order to set up a podcast. And I didn't even want to do it. I was just like, oh, this thing's burning a hole in the back of my head. I'm just going to write it down on a piece of paper so I can just not have to look at it for a while. But then I went back to it. Like if I wrote it down on Sunday, I think I went back to it on Tuesday and I was like, oh, that's an action list. Like that's a to-do list. Like if I could just do those 6 things, I might be like pretty close to actually having a podcast, And these things, and it's just amazing, just building that relationship with just writing things down and then just coming back to it and going, wow, like this is going to actually help me create something in your life. It's such a simple yet deeply profound process.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I guess the idea of when you've got a great idea and then as soon as you write it down, it turns from an idea to a goal.
Yeah.
And it turns into like this physical thing that can now be created. And that's how manifestations really begins, I believe, is as soon as you write it down.
And so have you always been a believer of have you always looked into things on a bit more of a metaphysical scale, or was this just something that's just evolved through the time? Like you've just started writing things down and God forbid they actually started to happen and then you're like, what is going on?
Yeah, look, I would have to say that I remember at the start of my entrepreneurial journey, I watched a very famous, there's a book about it called The Secret.
Uh-huh.
Which most people probably would have heard. And at the very start of my entrepreneurial journey, I was just, wow, the law of attraction, like how does this work? Yeah. What is this about? And I guess that I've always been pretty good at attracting things to me, but I never really understood
Yeah.
What I loved about The Secret is the idea of when you're sort of your mind map and having these goals and sort of thinking about everything in a positive way and being able to create this future of all these really cool things you really want in your life. And I was like looking at The Secret, I guess the one thing probably I felt that I didn't really talk about was the action aspect. And I guess all I really did was like take the concept of the law of attraction, how it actually worked, and then added all these different layers of how I could take action on these different aspects. And I was able to turn the ideas to a physical. And the interesting part is I remember when I wrote a whole bunch of goals down at the start of 2008, and
Yep.
there was some materialistic stuff, there was some travel places, there was some business goals, there was some personal goals, like a whole list of things. And back, like I've actually ticked off every single one. I'm like, well, why was that? Like, what made all those parts of reality? And I just believe there was a combination of like years and then writing them down and turning into a goal, and then obviously come up with a bit of a plan and putting some time and some dollar signs behind it, because some of the goals are free, some of them might cost a little bit of income, and then literally just a whole bunch of action lists behind it and just coming up of achieving it day to day. And looking back, it just seems so simple. And I just believe that so many people overcomplicate it like I did.
Yep.
I'm like, well, it wasn't as hard as I initially thought it was.
Yeah.
And everything seems to be a lot easier now.
Yeah.
Looking back. But it wasn't. But now looking back, the journey didn't seem that bad. But at the time, it felt like it was never going to get any better.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think that's profound. I think one thing that I keep coming across in all the interviews on this journey of the Inspired Evolution is like the truth is usually quite simple, you know, and it's like when someone's got an agenda in it or something, or, you know, like someone's trying to sell you something, or that's when it starts getting complicated, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, but when it's like nice and simple, it's like usually the truth is just like, yeah, mate, just like literally you had the thought, write it down, take some action, like you just said, put your energy behind it a little bit, and watch what happens. It's so simple yet so profound. What's part of your like taking inspired action has been the thing that kind of has been most surprising to you, I guess?
In regard to,
like, is it your business that inspires you the most, or is it the relationships you have? Or, what's like
relationship you have? Yeah, like that's a really interesting point. Like, I was always trying to find this work-life balance, and only because I'd heard about it and I didn't really understand what it was, and I just thought, well, maybe I just need to. That's what I need. And I guess probably the way I now look at it is I sort of look at like my business and my life as in like two strands of DNA, and they sort of like intertwine.
Right.
I sort of when I put my year plan into place, this might sound a little bit like backwards, but I'm like, initially, like, okay, 10 years ago when I very first started building my business, I guess I probably just built the business for the sake of building the business. And there was probably some pretty, maybe some more selfish aspects of why I did it. Maybe there was some like more just, hey, maybe I want to do this for money and just to build my ego, make me feel good and whatever else. Selfish aspects to it. And I guess now when I look to do my strategy for the year, I flip it around. So I do all my personal stuff first, and I have a whole list of like loves, like things I love, and there's things that really drive me. So things like feelings I'm always trying to achieve each year, which is like love is a massive driver for me. There's like excitement, which is a massive driver for me. Freedom is a big driver. So those three key feelings and those emotions are the things I'm looking to drive me every single year. So the way I do my yearly strategy. Okay, so what three things, three emotions, and what do I need to do to be able to get the most out of myself? Because 70% any decision anyone's going to make is going to be based on emotions, and I know that I want to maximize my business, be able to maximize myself.
Yeah.
So if I have excitement, I'll just go through what things are going to excite me. So there's things like new business ventures. There's like I love coaching people and I love people ask me questions and wanting to get better. Like I've always been excited by that. That really excites me. So how can I do more of that? Going traveling and seeing new places, going on hikes, jumping in the water. Like I'm just quite an upbeat person, just anything that's going to help me feel excited. And there's not always going to be a monetary figure on that. It's freedom. So for me, like, this is going to sound really weird, but I feel when I'm on a plane. I got my phone like on like airplane mode.
Yeah.
I'm like, I did 56 flights last year. So I did a flight every single week on average. So I'm like, okay, if I'm just doing that, I get that sense of freedom, and I find other ways of getting freedom. So, like I'm sort of fortunate enough to live across the water. So I just sort of leave my phone at home and just walk down to the beach and just chill and get that sense of freedom. So, pre-locking those times in. So when all that stuff's going to happen, so I can get that sense of freedom and love. So, making sure I pre-lock in times. I lock in times with my wife when we're doing our holidays at the beginning of the year. Hey, what we're going to be doing. I pre-lock in times with my daughter, when we're going to be doing stuff collectively. I pre-lock in times with my really good friends. Pre-lock in things that I really love doing, which is like, I love doing stuff like, so for example, I launched my January this year, so I pre-locked in times. So when I was actually, I felt like last year I needed about 150 hours of writing times, which I really just wanted to get my message out to the world. So just locked in 150 hours of time just dedicated to writing. And it's interesting. People go, oh, Daniel, you sound like a really organized person. I'm like, I'm telling you right now, I was the most unorganized person. I used to wing everything. And people, and it's funny because people always go, yeah, I want to go with the flow, because going with the flow means I've got more adventure. And the interesting part is that I actually have more adventure and more excitement in my life now having a plan than before when I didn't. And I believe you can get so much more out of yourself, and you can really enhance the feelings by just having things already pre-allocated. So I then lock in all that stuff personally, and then I go through, okay, what time do I have for my business now? I now need to then lock in, and then I lock in all my times for my business. So every day when I wake up in the morning, like I just feel good. Like I feel like there's a purpose behind what I'm doing. I feel like I'm doing all the things I really want to do. And then it's so easy for me to get to work, irrespective of if things are going well or not well. Like I find myself in a pretty good headspace. More times than not, that is.
Amazing, because you've prioritized what matters most to you.
Correct.
And you've not only prioritized it, but again, you've taken action to factor it in and made time for it and created space and energy around it. Yeah, amazing. And I love that you share that, you weren't necessarily the most organized to begin with.
It sounds like I'm super organized, which I've learned to become, but I'm telling you now, I was terrible.
Yeah, it's a blessing. I've learned on this journey as well, like just to give you an idea of like how that's shown up in my own life is so like every Wednesday now I'll record a couple of episodes, but I used to just do like an episode or an interview wherever I could throughout the week and it was kind of like going with the flow, as you put it. But I started realizing that I was like kind of all over the shop. It was like, someone was in Seattle and someone was in like London, and some interviews I'm lucky, like yourself, you're here in Melbourne, in Sydney, so it's at least the same time zone.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so at least, but they didn't always sync up. And then I was just like, I can't be waking up at 2 a.m. one day and then like another time, it just turned into a mess. And so then I started realizing, all right, I'm just going to pick a day. Like I'm just going to do everything on Wednesday. Like I'm just going to do interviews on Wednesday. And so then I started doing 2 to 3 interviews on Wednesday because the setup's all ready to go. It's all locked in, and I can do 2 to 3 episodes, and it's really not that stressful at all, because the tech's all set up and I'm here, right, doing this. And but what I accidentally didn't realize was basically if you're doing 3 episodes every Wednesday, you're basically doing almost a month every week. And I think this is like, and so then I've had to dial it back because obviously I've got to keep the episodes relevant and like, to where everything's at. But that was a really profound lesson for me, which was like, actually you can achieve, because I remember in the past, like doing 1 episode a week sometimes was an issue. It was like, where's the guest? Where do I lock it in? But as soon as I was like, you know what? Doesn't matter, mate. Like, just I found someone that inspired my evolution, and we can have a really deep chat about something. So, like, in this conversation, it's about taking action and creating the life of your dreams. Like, I'm keen to have this conversation with you. It's like, when is a Wednesday that you're available? When you dial that in, and it's like, boom, we can make this happen on this particular Wednesday, and then that lines up. And like exactly what you just shared, like if you plan, you get so much more out of it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Now, one thing that I really want to have a chat to you about is thank you so much for sharing your values of freedom, love, and excitement. And I think one thing that I really picked up on there was like the excitement of setting up your own business venture and stuff like that. And I think something, I'm not sure if I'm at liberty to share this, but I'm going to anyway, was basically a very dear friend of ours connected us together. And he actually started his business as an offshoot by basically coming to work with you and just, and there was the opportunity for you to totally just hire him and for you to just, have someone work for you because he was inspired by the work that you were doing. However, you took a very different approach. You basically said, yeah, come along to the office, learn what you need to learn, but still go and set up your own business. And I think that says a lot to me personally, just about how much your values of love, obviously caring for someone else beyond yourself, freedom, how much freedom matters to you and how much you'd like to see that in other people as well. And then the excitement of people doing the things that brings them love and freedom themselves permeates not just your own life, but those that you're around as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, it's funny. Like, I think a lot of people probably think I'm a little bit crazy, which maybe I am, but have this. It's funny because I'm very open to like my staff. I'm very open to anyone inside my company. I'm like, look, if you want to come work with me for 2 years and go set up your own business, no problems at all. I'll give you everything that you need to know, and I'll be the first to help you set up. My competitor, no problems at all. I'll help you. I'll give you all the tools you need, and I'll help you set it up. That's always been. I guess it wasn't always my mentality early on, but it was probably what I really wanted out of the relationships and the people that were coming in to work with me. I wanted people to come in and go, hey, like Daniel isn't just about getting every single bit of effort out of us. Like, he actually generally cares and he's open to the idea of us using him as a mentor and asking all different types of questions and learning all different types of the business. And for us, then if we were to then branch off and open up a business, he's so open and supportive. And I've had a lot of different types of people that have worked in my company that have left and opened up businesses and doing very well. I remember only probably about 2.5 years ago, I had a guy that was working with me for many years who left and went and worked for another company in recruitment, funny enough. Worked for them for a couple of years, and he came back to me and he goes, look, I really want to open up my own business. And I took him out for a few beers. I sat down with him and gave him all my ideas. I let him come into my office. We did a 2-hour workshop. I showed him all the things he needed to do. And the funny thing is now is that I know that he only runs a very small business now, but he went from, he was probably generating about 100 to 120K a year for himself. And I know that through setting his own business, he's doubled that and looking to build on the back of that. And I think that's an absolutely incredible story. And I'm just hoping one day, I've done that enough times or then people then to go out there and empower other people. And I get so much out of hearing those stories and watching people go out there and on their own journey and doing some really cool things and living a pretty cool life.
And is that is that idea of contribution, is that what ties into, like when you finally see yourself, winding down from the business to more like where you want to serve in the future as a coach and a mentor? Because it seems like, this openness and this transparency, which is, I guess, unfortunately more rare than common. And this is probably why people call you crazy. But is that kind of the vision of what's driving, your aspirations, like in the future, like wherever this sort of goes into?
So I guess 100%. I think like early on, what triggered a lot of these is that, I come from an engineering type background where traditional type of job where you just sort of, you're sort of trading your time for money. The next promotion was quite a while away. You may get a pay rise every year, you may not.
Yep.
And come into obviously running my own business, which is obviously it's a complete different mindset.
Yeah.
And at those early years, I had so many people that were just so supportive of me on my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
And so many people that weren't earning any income off me that would still take my phone calls, reply to emails, still so happy to help me.
Yeah.
And I know deep down that I just wouldn't be here today without having those people that helped me in those early years. And I guess I just I want to be able to be a person that makes a difference to people at the early stages of their journey or the later stage of the journey, like I've had people do for me. Just want to pay it back, and if I can pay it back at a bigger scale, then even better.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds like paying it forward, if anything.
Yeah, all paying it forward, right? Yeah.
It's amazing. I really been tuning into that more and more recently. I guess being Indian, I think a lot about karma. But I've noticed that like more and more these even things like gratitude. I interviewed this other lady the other day. She's bringing like gratitude and appreciation into workplaces through like technology. But even like what you're sharing, like in terms of like paying it forward, like these little, not necessarily esoteric things, but like more like inner work type sort of things like karma, gratitude, and like taking action and this sort of stuff like is permeating the way we actually do business and work in the world, and I'm starting to wonder if that's always been there or if that was just a byproduct of millennials now doing business.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So, what's the future look like, mate? Like, what's inspiring you at the moment?
So, yeah, that's a really good question. So at the moment, there's probably a couple of things that I'm looking to do. So both of the traditional type businesses that I've been running for many years have got to the point where they are all very successful now. So I would really love to create a whole new wave of entrepreneurs where they can run businesses and be location free.
Yeah.
I would love to then look at starting up whole new businesses where people they can travel, run their business, where they're not sort of having to be in an office or having to be in one place. They can truly be location free. So it's sort of coming up with lots of different think tank ideas, and if it's me being an investor or being a partner or being a mentor, that's definitely something that I would love to drive over the next sort of 7 to 10 years. And it's funny because I know that you mentioned just before we started and talked about sort of AI and how the sort of the world is going to sort of change, and education is going to change over the next sort of 20, 30 years. And a massive believer in I guess there are going to be a lot of changes, and I truly believe there's going to be a few different types of people. There's going to be the creators, which are, I guess, always going to be there. There's definitely going to be people that are going to be validated with having these very good communication skills, and all negotiation skills. There's going to be people that are going to need to be able to build the software and understand the software. So, like, I guess if I think about the future, I'm like, well, in those 3 areas is definitely where I want to be positioning myself and my future businesses. in regards to getting involved in software technology, if it's creation or if it's implementation, getting involved with communication, sales, negotiation, if it's having like a team of leaders and thought leaders, or if it's people who can negotiate and coach and educate and inspire. And then obviously a whole bunch of creation artists, musicians, right? So like, I guess I think the future is massive. And in those three areas is definitely where I believe is going to be massive growth phase over the next sort of 20 or 30 years.
Amazing. Yeah, sounds really, yeah, I do agree with you. Sounds like the future is really bright and there's a lot of promise. And I love the, when you share it, it seems like a no-brainer, but obviously you've put a lot of thought into where the future lies. Yeah, amazing. And just before we start weaving out, man, time flies when you're having fun. Can I find out a message in your heart that you really want to share with the listeners of Inspired Evolution?
All right, say that one more time. It just
dropped out just as I was talking. Selective, AI selective listening.
Yeah, exactly.
What was is there a message in your heart that is something you want to share with the listeners of the Inspired Evolution?
Yeah, look, like, I feel sometimes that people these days fall in love with the dream, but potentially procrastination stops them in their tracks. People fall in love with the victory, but potentially never really got prepared for the battle. And the interesting part is it because we aren't doing what we love, or is it because we are doing what society says is success? You have to do you, right? Like, you have to do you. And when starting any journey, on however big or however small it is, I think that you need to keep in mind with what is your pain threshold. And I remember watching this video. Will Smith was talking about his pain threshold, and he had this really cool example. He goes, well, if me and you, he was talking to the interviewer, we're on a treadmill and we're having a competition to see who can last the longest, two things would happen. Number one, I would beat you, or number two, I would die trying. And obviously he has no pain threshold, and that's why he was end up being so famous and such a great actor. And look, everyone has a different pain threshold. I'm not trying to say, look, if you're coming into anything, you go, hey, look, pain doesn't affect me. I'm just going to keep dragging out the entrepreneurial journey until I make it. I'm just like, you just need to understand, like, what is your pain threshold? Like, if you wanted to start your own business, do you have 6 months, or do you have a year, or do you have 10 years? Or like if you want to make music and make it as in your sole business, like how long, like what is your pain threshold? Like how long are you willing to go through the challenges before it's able to be a rainbow? How long can you go through the shit before the rainbow comes out? And I guess before I get into any sort of endeavor, I always ask me, it's like, well, how much struggle am I willing to go through before I get the reward? And do I love something enough for me to be prepared to go through those struggles, and what sort of time frame? And I guess once I was able to sort of ask those types of questions, it sort of enabled me to go through, all right, maybe that's not so much a priority, or maybe it's a priority. And my message to everyone is like, look, like, just understand it doesn't matter what it is, that there will be some aspects of struggle, and only because one, you'll self-doubt yourself, and it is an internal struggle, or you'll be worried about what other people thinking of you. And we all know that public speaking is the number one fear in the world. And why is it the number one fear in the world? Well, is it because everyone just everyone wants to be loved, and everyone doesn't want to be judged, everyone wants to be feel a part of something, and I'm just like, people worry so much about other people, and so many people's opinions affect the way people think and act. So I know I've just said a lot of different imparting messages. So if I had to sort of
It was
all those parts up into a sentence. It's like, understand the struggle and how much time you're willing to go through that before you get the love of the reward, and just understand, is it really worth that?
Yeah.
Understand that. Be careful and don't let people's opinions or your own doubts stop you from moving forward, because sometimes people give up before they've even really tried, and that's because they've let themselves believe, or they let other people believe they're not able to do what they really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And just making sure, if you just got to take small steps every single day. You don't need to build Rome today. Look, I remember walking to this bar, right, and it had this sign that said "free beer tomorrow," right, and I'm just next day I come in, I'm like, free beer tomorrow. The next day, the free beer tomorrow, and that message just for me was like, I just knew I needed to take action every day, and if I was able to take a small step every single day, I just knew that inevitably it was something great was going to happen, and just stay on track. If you know that you can only do something for 6 months, like do that those 6 months to your full potential. Your pain threshold is only 6 months. If your pain threshold is 10 years, just make sure you implement all the stuff for that 10-year period. And that's really it. I think that's probably from my parting words.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I think there's like a lot of value in just that awareness of, like the pain threshold and the way you described it as well, just that resilience that it takes. And it's not about being completely like resilient proof, it's just about being intimate enough with yourself to understand what your resilience is and how much you're willing to give and take in a situation, and then evaluate from that point, and then walk in knowing that, this is where you're at with things, and let your love for things really express and create as much as possible. Yeah, man, profound. I love just how simple your ideas are. Like, they're just like, they're so deep, they're so like clean, I think it speaks a lot to in terms of how far you've come on your journey as well. I think makes a lot of sense. There's no fluff, if I can put it that way. It's all deep stuff. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and share your insights with me today, and obviously not just today. Thank you so much for all the work that goes into building an enterprise over the last 10 years and having a vision for the future as well, all the work that you have to consistently show up, and all those action lists and all the nights you had to lose before you figured out that, there was ways that you could sleep more comfortably. And just wishing you all the best on the future, man. And just before I tune out, Daniel, I've got one last question, which is kind of esoteric in its nature, which is, beyond the businesses, beyond the family, beyond the travel, beyond like, the material world that we're in. Who is Daniel?
I love that question. And if I had to give you one word, it would be love.
I love you, man.
I love you too, man.
It has been such a pleasure. It has been such a pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. For those that want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I've got a few different ways you can get in touch with me. I'm happy for guys to connect with me on LinkedIn, which is a very easy way to just connect and shoot message over. Or if anyone wants to shoot me an email, you can get me at daniel@shithappensandrainbows.com.au. Look, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to all your listeners. I'm really looking forward to, if anyone wants to give me feedback, and I'm happy. for all feedback. I've been through enough, positive or negative, all good. It's through. I'm happy to read it all. But look, it's been an absolute pleasure. And
oh man, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Love of the Inspired Evolution and sharing the Love of the Inspired Evolution. If you feel like this content has supported you or may support anyone else that you know may resonate with the content of it, please share away and share the love around. Thank you guys so much. And to stay up to date on whatever's coming out with the Inspired Evolution, please subscribe. There's all these links in the bio for you to tune into the episodes and all these different platforms, just so the message can get to you and your loved ones. Thank you so much for all your love and support. Stay inspired to evolve.